So when you start using Maya, the interface can be a bit daunting, overwhelming, so I'm going to show you a couple things about the interface that might help. One, if you're not seeing menu options, it actually has customized settings for modeling, rigging, animation, special effects, rendering, or you can customize it. In this class, we're going to be starting with modeling, which is really where you'll find all the objects to make these new basic objects. You have tabs here, which are the next place you'll go to get the objects to make. Curves are 2D objects, and surfaces are 3D, but they involve a nerve system, which we're not going to go over quite yet. We'll be getting to that after you've made cups and bowls. We're going to start with polygon, and you'll find a sphere, a cube, cylinder, and some other objects we're not going to be starting out with yet, but whether it's a cone, a pyramid, a torus, a tube, or a plane, you can use them for objects later. I would recommend against using a plane if you're going to be trying something like a table setting, because unlike a cube, this only has a one-sided normal. So if you tried to make a table with this, the bottom of your table wouldn't exist. Now, if you notice, I'm rotating my object, or my view, not rotating my object. To do that, I hit Alt and left click. That allows me to rotate and look at an object. If I want to pan or move that view, that's Alt and middle mouse button. And then to zoom in and out is Alt and right click. If I want to delete an object, I can select it using the pointer and hit delete on my keyboard. So let me put in a cube, and they all have different ways of creation, but they'll tell you on the bottom. Drag the base, and once I get the length and width, I'll click again, drag up to set the height. I have some basic operations I can do to this. To select, I hit the first one, pointer, or I can hit Q on my keyboard. I have different methods of selection, whether I want to paint it or draw over it. And for right now, we're going to ignore those. Looking at Q on your keyboard, you'll notice there's W, bless you, W, E, and R next to it. W brings us to the Move tool, which allows us to move it in the Y, the X, or the Z. Rotation, which is going to be E, allows you to rotate. Since I'm just selected on a point, you won't see that much of a change there. So I'll show you that in a minute. Finally, scale, which also doesn't work with a point. We'll scale it up and down. And the shortcut key for that is R. Now, accidents happen, and if you do something like accidentally get it in vertice mode, or if you purposely want to do that later, you would physically right-click and hold on the object. Vertices allows you to pick each point and manipulate them. Edge allows you to do the same with each edge of the object. Face, once again, lets you select the face of an object. And then there's vertex face, which shows each face with a vertex option. Multi selects whichever one you roll over. UV mode will be used for materials later. And then object mode allows you to click the whole object. If you want to move the entire thing, rotate, or scale it, this is the option that you want. And after you get into a sub-selection mode to modify an object, when you're finished, we highly recommend going back and putting it in object mode. Now, if I change an object, a lot of times what will happen is I'll either still be set to world space, or it may change to object. If you double click on the move tool, you'll get the ability to change your coordinate system to either the object's original coordinate system or the world, which allows you to have the solid X, Y, and Z. You also can edit the pivot, which is where those move coordinates and rotation coordinates will come around. So if I decided this needed to be something more like a door flap, I could edit that pivot to be in the corner of the object. And now when I use that rotation, instead of rotating around the center, it rotates around the end where my pivot is. Now, a couple accidents I've seen students do. If you hit Control and Space Bar, you'll get rid of a lot of your menus and accidentally put it into Expert View. If this happens, you can hit Control and Space Bar again to fix that. Now, if you decided to delete an entire object, but were in face mode, you could technically delete it and leave a face there. And then when the students try to select it, sometimes it won't let them. I can't duplicate that one right now, but if you're having that problem, right-click, go to Object Mode. Select your object and hit Delete. Please, if your objects are acting funny, do not be afraid to delete them and start over. The other thing I want to go over is the difference, or what you get in the channel box versus the attribute editor. The channel box shows its place in the scene. So if I wanted this to be centered exactly, I could go ahead and put 0 and 0 for the translate X and translate Z. You also have subdivisions, which are a really important concept in 3D. The more divisions you have on something, the smoother it is, but the more the polys increase, or the more it actually has to render and process. If you've ever played a video game and had lag, that means the system had too much to process. However, making your subdivisions too small will either make the object not look correct, or will make the reflections odd, since each reflection is usually calculated just to the box it's on. So you'll want to find a comfortable medium. And in general, when we start, we'll be telling you how many subdivisions you should have. You can adjust these inputs by going to Polysphere, or in the attribute editor, you'll see everything that this is linked to. Its shape, its translation and location, and also the attributes for the sphere itself. It will also name them. And the more you make, you'll get polysphere 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which can be hard to keep track of. To rename an object, you can select in the polysphere and type in a name. If I wanted this to be a bouncing ball, or later I was going to make it into a cup, I could name it that. And then, out of my list, I can definitely tell that's the object. It doesn't matter much now, but when you have a lot of objects to work with, you also usually use this window called the outliner. And having the name in here definitely helps. There we go. So it looks like you want to change it in that polysphere menu, not the mesh. That's it for the basics for right now. As we go, you're going to learn more about the edit menu, which can modify an already existing shape, create, which makes new objects, select, which will get more advanced into the selection settings, modify, which does even more detail to modify this existing object. These are usually the basic operations. These are the complex ones. Display, which will allow you to adjust the display. Window, which allows you to find the other windows. And then different tools for editing your mesh and adjusting your meshes, your curves, transformations. And we'll get to most all of these by the end of the second quarter. So go ahead, play around, see what kind of things you can create, and I hope you have fun.